many non-traditional methods are being used by mooring holders to secure that mooring? Meaning, how many engine blocks, train wheels, truck wheels, things that we probably don't even want to know are sitting down there?
It's difficult to answer that question because the variety is so great. I did an analysis several months ago that just said how much weight is sitting on the bottom and what is the total population of categories in which the weights are divvied into. We've done a big cleanup in the last 60 days on that information, and I can provide better information at a subsequent meeting. I happened to be in there today updating moorings in the A field, and there were steam engine parts on the bottom. I believe we are no longer, I don't believe there's any more concrete blocks. I believe all the concrete blocks have been removed. There's a chance there are still some concrete piles out there. Engine parts, truck wheels, train wheels, engine blocks, steam cogs, those are all still out there. But please understand, those are all privately owned. There's only 16 that the city owns, and so the city can do whatever it wants with its materials, and it's our desire to put cleaner, better, more environmentally friendly and less intrusive and less susceptible to leaching materials back when it comes our time to replace those. But we cannot enforce, or I'm sorry, there's no current plan to attempt to force owners of private equipment to upgrade or change outside of their regular replacement process.
Pardon my follow-up question, if you don't mind. Please, I'm relatively new to the commission. Does the folks that have these moorings that know that these items are down there, is there an opportunity for them to self-police what they have anchored down there? Meaning, is there anything preventing them from saying, I would like to change my mooring because I understand my line is attached to an engine block? Or are their hands tied with being able to self-regulate and self-police?
I'm not aware of any prohibition to a mooring permittee changing their equipment, other than to approved equipment. For instance, concrete is no longer allowed. Other materials that are known to leach, you can't use tin, you can't use other material, you can't use mercury. But there's no prohibition that I'm aware of from a mooring permittee that currently has an engine block and wants to replace it with a steel casting. Nothing prevents them from doing that today except the expense.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying whatever they did helical-wise would have to meet the current weight load specifications for the manufacturer, which they do. So, Commissioner Morrison?
Are there other local harbors that have the helical system in use?
We here in Newport Harbor actually have the helical anchor system in use for dock applications and temporary dock applications. I'm not aware of a mooring application, and there wouldn't be a mooring because we don't yet have approved specifications. I'm not aware of other harbors on the West Coast. There are harbors on the East Coast that I'm aware of that are using this system very effectively.
And on the estimated cost, it seems like the costs that are listed there are just basically going straight to implementation. Is there any kind of permitting or environmental review that has to happen before this could be implemented?
The current thinking among staff, which includes me and members of the city attorney's office, the current thinking is that because we would do this in conjunction with our biannual maintenance, no specific permitting would be required. We would be reducing our impact on the seafloor, and we would be reducing our impact in terms of materials used. In the regular course of our required maintenance, this swap out of equipment would not require special permitting.
So no coastal development permit is needed.
The current thinking of staff, including members of the city attorney's office, is that no coastal development permit would be necessary because we have the requirement to do the annual
Director Cunningham.
No comment.
I have no further comments as well. I'll open up for public comment.
I'm Adam Lovins. Responding to Commissioner Williams' observations, that there is something in, I don't know if it's in Title 17 or on the website for the Harbor Department, but we're required to use metal weights. I'm undecided on this. I mean, there seems like there are a lot of good aspects, as is, described in the Harbor Department report. I'll just make some observations. Dragging or shifting of current setup during severe weather events is actually another form of shock absorption. If you've got more holding power, something on the boat may break rather than having an anchor drag across the bay floor. And the staff report says that studies have shown that helical anchors can provide up to 40% more holding capacity. I would think those studies should be a part of the agenda materials. There's numerous sightings about reduced risk of unsuitable materials leaching from traditional weights, which we're talking about. If you follow current environmental studies and trends and concerns, you've heard of forever chemicals and microplastics, and these things may come from elastic mooring straps and submerged plastic floats. This may be something in 20 years, you go, oops. I mean, none of us can advocate for heavy metals in the water, but plastics and microplastics in the water aren't good either. There's numerous references that indicate that this will often require less frequent inspection and maintenance. It would be nice to see something. Mr. Blank referenced the manufacturer and the promotional materials. They're trying to sell something, some real data, life expectancy of these elastic bands, cables and ropes in the water. If these are in use on the East Coast, some of this data should be available. And for me to be on board, and perhaps some other people, to see these things rather than glowingly described in the staff report, to see some actual reports and documentations of in-use life expectancy, mean time between failure, maintenance costs. You need to hire scuba divers now instead of Chuck South. All these things would help get us to where I think rational decisions could be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Hi, Michael Spano. I would like to second what Adam said about the maintenance. When everything works great, it's less maintenance, but when things fail, now you need a scuba diver in there. And also the elastic bands. In these engineering schematics, I don't see what the material is. Mind you that stainless steel is predominantly, has a lot of chromium in it. And when it's submerged in the mud like that, and Paul, you might have experience, I didn't know that there were these screws installed in piers, but you could get differential corrosion. You set up a battery deep down in the mud, 10, 20 feet down there. There's not as much dissolved oxygen as there is on the surface. You can get pit corrosion. I don't know if you've experienced that, or if any of the East Coast people experience that. That's just something to throw up here. Also, I want to congratulate you, Vice Chair Beard, for pushing this forward. This has been a project for a while. I've come to several meetings now for several years. So congratulations on getting to this point. Now is the time to collect as much data as you possibly can. I noticed that the 3 moorings that are tentative, they're not sharing bow and stern the way that most moorings are concerned for the future if this is going to be rolled out to the other mooring fields. Instead, they're isolated. Now would be a great opportunity to potentially convince one of the other mooring holders in the 20s or in the 40s to swap so you can get real-world data on that really close proximity when the tides are ripping in there. That's something to consider. Also, the pull tests, 50%, that's not enough. That only gives you a sample size of 3. That's really not good. Do pull tests on all of them. That gives you an N of 6. And yeah, I guess I just want to say, now is the time to really get all the information and get more people convinced on this. Pull those things out after 2 years and see where the corrosion is, if there's any. See how the how are they removed if they need to be removed? These are all things to take into consideration, and now is gonna be your chance to get all that information. So yeah, once again, congratulations, and I hope you collect a lot of data moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Wade Womack. Dear Harbor Commissioners, in regards to agenda item number 4, I respectfully oppose recommendation C, which is to instruct the Harbor Department to move forward with the conversion of 3 moorings from existing tackle to helical tackle system, as this installation project constitutes a development which requires a coastal development permit. I do not believe the city has obtained a CDP for the installation of the 3 helix anchors. Additionally, I oppose the staff finding this item exempt from CEQA for the following reasons. The installation of a helix mooring anchor is subject to the CEQA because it constitutes a project that may impact the environment. CEQA mandates that any activity carried out by a public agency or a private entity requiring discretionary approval, which has the potential to affect the environment, undergo environmental review. Installing a helix mooring anchor involves physical alterations to the seabed, which can influence marine ecosystems, water quality, and sediment dynamics. The installation process itself necessitates evaluation under CEQA to ensure that any potential environmental effects are identified and mitigated appropriately. Therefore, to comply with CEQA, the installation of the helix mooring anchor requires an environmental analysis to determine its potential impacts and to implement measures that protect California's marine environment. It should be noted that the helix anchor system is significantly different than the existing mooring anchor system in that it screws into the seabed. Additionally, the proposed project is expensive. These expenses are likely to be passed to the mooring users in the form of higher mooring rates. As noted by many recently, higher mooring rates will eliminate mooring access, which is a form of coastal access. For many people, it will restrict access for many people of lesser means. For these reasons and more, the city should not move forward without the benefit of an environmental analysis and a coastal development permit. And just a couple other thoughts. I'm not sure why we're moving from the tried and true that's worked so well for so many years. The current system is quite financially effective. This is really expensive. This is taxpayer money. I'm not aware of the leaching problem of the metals, or that, has there been analysis if that's a real legitimate problem? Also, I don't think there's really any eelgrass in Mooringfield Sea, or I should correct myself. There's like 3 small patches. So, and I don't know that the helix itself is what stops the scraping. I think it's the little float. So I think the pitch that the helix is super duper environmental friendly, and by the way, we have 2-point moorings, double point moorings, so nothing's swinging. The only swinging ones are the swing cans in the harbor, and that's not where this is being applied. For what it's worth, in Redondo, they nixed this whole thing 12 years ago. If you Google it, with a log, the elastic bands broke, and they had a lot of problems, and
Thank you.
and they had to scratch it. Thank you.
Hello again, I'm Benson with the Newport Warren Association. Thank you for bringing this issue up so we can learn more about it. I do have a lot of questions. I would love to know more about the leaching issue and what studies have been done to determine how big of an issue that is and what other options there might be to mitigate that. I'm not sure about the Redondo one, but I did know of an article in 2012 talking about 9 of 12 helix anchors, to Secretary Marston's point about where else this particular system has been used. In Santa Barbara, 9 of 12 failed, and they ended up not using that anymore because of all the issues that were associated with it. I also am really curious about the cost. I did hear Harbor Master Blank say it might be more cost effective, but I have to wonder if we're involving divers, how much that's going to cost and when. Are there any specifics on that? Because currently we pay about $2,000 every 2 years. It's manageable. It's something we can budget for. But if we're looking at this possibly being rolled out in the future, or it's taxpayer dollars, I think the maintenance might be something we really want to be aware of. How much that's going to end up costing us. And yeah, I kind of wonder, going back to, I know it's an earlier item, but there were
you. Seeing no further public comments, I will bring it back to the commission if anybody wants to add anything. Any commissioners?
Sure.
Okay.
I always try to boil things down in its most simplest form and common sense, and I don't need an environmental report or anything to tell me that an engine block is not better than a purpose-built screw in the bottom. Sorry. Like, I can't believe this is not something that has been self-policed in the past. I recognize that I've only been here 5 years, but how do we debate and get metal reports and water quality reports, like when in its most basic form, you can't sit in front of the general public. You can't go to any street in Newport Beach, knock on their door and go, hey, I know you're not a boater, but do you think an engine block is better than a purpose-built screw on the bottom of the ocean? Right, like the fact that we spend time on this is crazy to me. Like, I am not in support of supporting an engine block or train wheels on the bottom of our harbor in the name of cost-effective boating. I think that's a really weak argument. That's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Any other comments? Commissioner Scully?
Vice Chair Bear, I'd like to just make a motion if I could. Can we move this forward?
Absolutely.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the Harbor Department move forward with a pilot project to convert 3 moorings in the Seafield to the helical anchor system. I'd also like to say that, you know, we should keep good records and make those records available to the public to see how those are operating, and that this is exempt from CEQA.
We have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Thank you, Chair Cunningham. Let's go to vote.
Commissioner Scully,
Yay.
Commissioner Smershek,
Yay.
Commissioner Williams,
Yay.
Commissioner Young,
Yay.
Secretary Marston,
Yay.
Vice Chair Beer,
Yay.
Chair Cunningham,
Yay.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And the next item are the ad hoc committee updates, item 6.5, I believe. And there have been several ad hoc committees established to address short-term projects outside of the Harbor Commission objectives. And I'd like to get an update on those at this time, of which we have 3, I believe. And so let's start off with anything from Commissioners Scully, Sparchek, or Jan regarding the Alcoa credit.
Just from my standpoint, nothing further from our last Harbor Commission meeting when I went over the discussion that I had with Mr. Joe B. So there's been no further discussion that since then.
Understood, and that was a very extensive report that you provided. Thank you. Anything else from the other commissioners? No? The second ad hoc committee is established to review the general plan update for the Harbor and Bay element. Again, it's Commissioner Scully, Marston, and Leon. Any updates on that?
From my standpoint, nothing since Mr. Black's presentation from our last Harbor Commission meeting.
Okay, very good. Commissioners Sparchek and Williams regarding the public dock utilization. Anything to update there? No updates on that? Okay, so in that case, we will move on to public comment. Mr. Moser.
Yeah, Vice Chair Beer, regarding the general plan update to Harbor and Bay Element Ad Hoc Committee, I can announce, and I think there would be some publicity about that, there will be a public workshop covering 2 general plan topics. One is the land use element, and the other is the Harbor Bay, and now called Harbor Bay and Beaches element. And that public workshop will be coming up at Marina Park on December 5th from 6 to 8 p.m. And there, I believe, will be, you can see that noticed on the city's online calendar currently. If you look for December 5th, you will see the public workshop notice. And it's not scheduled yet, but I think there will be a meeting of the Harbor Bay and Beaches Subcommittee, Mr. Black's subcommittee of the GPAC, prior to that to finalize what the format of the workshop will be. I'm not totally sure of that. And I did want to caution you, because the GPAC members have been cautioned of this. If you see the announcements and the promotions, which would be like in the city manager's newsletter and Stu News about this, and you all feel inspired to go and watch the workshop in person, there could be a Brown Act issue involved in that, because it used to be okay for commission members to go to a publicly announced meeting, like speak of Newport or whatever, but there was a recent Attorney General opinion that says if a majority of the body goes there, it becomes a meeting of that body. So I don't know that all of you would want to go, but if you did, you should coordinate with the harbor master so that a less than majority go to the workshop, which will be on December 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments? Seeing none, I will close that out and move on to item 6.7, which is, I'm sorry, 6.6, the Harbor Commission 2024 objective updates. And I guess I'll go down the list and ask any of the commissioners if you have updates on your specific objectives, probably the most efficient way at this point. Commissioner Scully,
No updates.
Commissioner Young,
No updates.
Secretary Marston, Commissioner Williams,
None.
Commissioner Spurcheck,
No updates.
Chair Cunningham. I know he said none. I would like to mention, if I may, from prior discussion at the prior meeting, and I may be stepping out of bounds if you don't mind, Commissioner Spurcheck, you had mentioned that you wanted to look at taking on an initiative to, drive the Promontory Bay Public Dock Initiative. And so I would like to ask Commissioners Marston and I think it's Jan, you guys are on Objective 5, which could encompass amenities. And if it makes sense, I'm just throwing it out, that perhaps Commissioner Spurcheck would like to join that subcommittee with the respective agreement of the other commissioners, and then take on that project as an effective way to let you run with that for a little while and see if you can come up with something and report back however you see fit. So I would have to ask you if that's still in your, you want to consider that, and then ask the other commissioners if they would like to accept you on it.
Yes, I would like to move forward on that.
Okay, and how do you feel about that?
Yes, I'd like to accept him on.
And I can hear Commissioner Marston screaming, yes, that's okay too, so, so you're on.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Any public comments with respect to Harbor Commission objectives? Seeing none, we can now hear the Harbor Master update. Looking forward to it all night.
Good evening, Commissioners. Once again, I am Paul Blank, your grateful Harbor Master. Here's what happened in October. In terms of keeping the harbor clean, the electric patrol vessel was flagged down by an instructor during an OCC sailing class. The students had expressed great interest in the new patrol vessel, so they got an up-close and personal tour. It turned out there was a huge infestation of sea lions throughout the harbor. I cannot explain it. The water was not particularly warm. It didn't appear there was more nutrition for them, but they were out in force, so a huge amount of effort went into enforcement of sea lions. The no fishing signs at the Balboa Marina public dock continue to be vandalized. We continue to replace them. And we spent a lot of time enforcing the no fishing regulation at the Balboa Marina public dock. What you see in the upper right-hand corner, or upper right-hand image is the sailing students at OCC taking a tour of Sparky. In the lower left, you see the damaged no fishing sign, and on the right, you see as a patrolman or harbor service worker rolled up to the Balboa Marina public dock, an angler there with his bike and fishing pole right next to the restricted signs. In terms of keeping the harbor safe, we have finally, after more than 2.5 years, implemented surveillance cameras that allow us to look from the front desk at Marina Park over to the 15th Street public dock and the 19th Street public dock. We spent a great deal of time and effort controlling speed and traffic as it returned from the air show, especially during periods of low visibility. There was an interesting necessity to go do some residential dock lighting enforcement, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment. There were a huge number of mooring assists and docking assists associated with people visiting to enjoy the air show, and there was a lot of effort put into assisting them in foggy conditions. The uppermost image there is from the front desk of Marina Park over to the 15th Street public dock. The middle image is from the front desk at Marina Park over to the 19th Street public dock, and then in the lowest image, I just refer to some code that's specific to how lighting needs to be maintained, and it includes that lighting on any dock may not interfere with boating navigation or projecting onto neighboring properties. There was a very interesting example of a violation of that, which included some very sophisticated investigation techniques. In terms of keeping the harbor well enjoyed, an unpermitted charter was observed using the public dock at Balboa Marina for picking up passengers. That has resulted in an additional citation for that unpermitted charter operator, and we are working with him to come into compliance or stop chartering. The lighting issue that I referenced in the previous slide resulted in quite an escalating dispute between neighbors across a channel in the harbor, with projecting light from one property onto another, and then adjoining properties getting into the fray, and we were able to resolve that successfully without further escalation, but it did take a significant amount of investigative time, as well as some advanced investigative techniques, which involved gaining access to a restricted area of the harbor. And feel free to ask me questions about it. I'd rather not go into it at great length, but if you have questions, I'll do my best. And then the air show, despite the foggy conditions, was very well enjoyed on and off the water. In terms of odds and ends, we were successful at clearing 26 items out of our impound yard and collecting $1,400 in revenue. And all of those items have now gone on to new caretakers. There were 2 items that did not sell and went to the landfill. I mentioned that there are the new surveillance cameras at 15th and 19th Street. Those both came with new signage put up at both locations. Somebody saw fit to remove, without permission, the video surveillance signage at 19th Street. Conveniently, it was under surveillance, and we very quickly were able to identify and communicate with the perpetrator. We were also very successful at getting the perpetrator to contribute to some restorative justice, and he paid for the replacement of the signs. There were public comments delivered at the most recent Coastal Commission meeting that got me thinking about the cost for various services, and so I'll go over that in a moment. And then the most amusing call of the month came in the form of an in-person experience on the water with a paddleboarder. There was a patrolman doing nothing more than completing his daily duties in vacancy checks in the D field at idle speeds in the electric boat, not making any noise, not making any wake, and the paddleboarder, who was 75 yards in front of the saw fit to take off after him with a verbal assault for no apparent reason. And the log entry from that patrolman is included in your staff report in detail. Improved statistics. So here here are the mapped quest calls for service in the month of October. I'm pleased to report that we are remaining consistent with the total number of calls for service in any given month. We're averaging right around 2,000 calls for service a month, and I believe the blue dots across the map indicate that we are doing a fair job of covering all areas of the harbor. Some areas get more coverage than others, but we do cover the entirety of the harbor where the calls are negative. The harbor amenity map usage went way down last month. Can't explain it. Hopefully people just know where the services are and don't need to refer to the map, but there's the map year over year. There was a tremendous amount of activity in terms of issuing permits, especially marine activities permits. I call your attention to that marine activities permit figure again. When the harbor department, when Matt Coseyline came to the harbor department 4 years ago, they were issuing about 29 marine activity permits per year. Year to date through the end of October, he's issued 67 this year. So this is not a business unfriendly harbor. This is a very business friendly harbor. We just want it done within the guidelines set forth by the city council and with respect and understanding for the impacts on the surrounding community, residents, other harbor users, etc. The comparison to our previous year does not include the marine activities permits simply because they weren't in the permitting system, but we are pacing a bit ahead of permit issuances from last year. This is our Anchorage calendar for the month of October. Again, I really appreciate this visual. It gives so much information to harbor service workers and me about utilization in the harbor. I point out that for the month of October, there was only one night where we did not have a resident in the Anchorage. One night. Otherwise, the Anchorages were extremely well used in October. As I mentioned, I went off and did a bit of an analysis based on a comment contributed at Coastal Commission meeting. Specifically, the comment was, before the advent of the Harbor Department, the City of Newport Beach was spending $360,000 a year on contract with the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department for mooring management services. The insinuation was that the $2.8 million budget the Harbor Department had in 2024 was inappropriate. And what was not reflected in that comment was the fact that we do an awful lot more because we have been asked by the Harbor Commission and the City Council and harbor constituents and our colleagues in the City Manager's Office and our colleagues in Public Works to do a lot more. And this breaks down the 12 categories of service that we are actually providing and the percentage of our $2.8 million budget in fiscal 2024. You'll notice that mooring management, BYB management, and Harbor Commission support are in yellow. Those were all services that were being provided to the City of Newport Beach and its residents and its harbor users prior to the advent of the City Harbor Department. The other 9 services are all services that have been added since the advent of the Harbor Department in 2017. Harbor constituents were not receiving code enforcement. They were not receiving events and activities permitting. They were not receiving safety and rescue operations other than an emergency call to the lifeguards. They were not receiving marine park management. They were not receiving pump out and public dock maintenance. They were not receiving abandoned vessel abatement. They were not receiving education and information services. They were not receiving water quality water quality monitoring and management, and there was no Seafield realignment project. The actual money allocated to all of those 12 services is now reflected, and you can see as a percentage of the total. An interesting result of this study indicates that the City of Newport Beach Harbor Department is actually providing mooring management services for less than what the Orange County Sheriff's Department Harbor Patrol was collecting for that very same service. $360,000 in 2016. In 2024, the City of Newport Beach Harbor Department was able to provide actually much better mooring management services for $314,000. Here's the same information for the budget in 2025. Again, we're going to provide that mooring management service for right around $350,000. The rest of the budget breaks out as it does, and you will see that there are still 9 service categories that harbor constituents are enjoying that they were not enjoying when the harbor was managed by the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Department. Here's a summary breakdown just so you see how the harbor department does for the year completed in July. We had a revenue budget of just shy of $3 million. We actually got 10% above that with $3.3 million worth of revenue. Our personnel expenses came in slightly under budget, about $50,000 under budget, and our operating expenses were considerably below what was budgeted, but almost all of that was attributable to the Seafield project, which was budgeted but not executed. So I'm pleased to report that the City Harbor Department, from a financial perspective, is being exceptionally well managed. Here is the report on the traditional report on our statistics. If you want to dig into that, I'm happy to look at that with a magnifying glass with you at your convenience. In terms of year-over-year statistics, the two that I will call your attention to are that, again, the anchorage usage is way up, and you saw that in the graph, and that the public dock enforcement is way up, and a lot of that is attributable to the fact that we now have 2 more public docks upon which we do enforcement than we had been doing last year. That's your report.
Thank you, Harbor Master. I'll bring it back here. Commissioner Sverchek, any comments or questions for our Harbor Master this evening?
None, but fantastic job.
Commissioner Williams,
None, the city's very lucky to have you in the position you're in. Thank you so much.
Secretary Marston,
No comments, but thank you.
Commissioner Yon.
Thank you for delineating those services that you've been providing, the new services added, where we're getting so much more value from your department, and it's nice for you to articulate the way you did. Thank you.
Commissioner Scully.
I appreciate the presentation that you did as it relates to the different services that you provide. I think, I drove to Los Angeles on Tuesday, and you look at the streets, the street lights, the sidewalks. I mean, Newport Beach does such an incredible job of maintaining such a great city. You look at our police and fire and their commitment to our city. To not have something, to not have a harbor department and an effort such as you lead, Paul, would be criminal, in my opinion. It's great to see a well-managed harbor. I sit on the back of my boat. I see your men and women operating within the harbor, and I appreciate what they do and what you do, and I think it's just such a great compliment to what everything else we're doing in Newport Beach. So. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Ditto that. Chair Cunningham, any comments or questions for our Harbor Master?
Well, that guy, thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, and thank you, Harbor Master Blank. Great job, and that report is fantastic, by the way. That says a lot, and I think that should be well publicized. I'm sorry. I still can't hear you, Susan. Yeah, no. Next is public comments.
Hey, thanks, Paul. As always, informative. I think more people should stick around and see all this stuff, and there's just so much information. Regarding the vandalism of signs, I don't know if you do this, having dealt with police departments elsewhere, they take photos of every instance of tagging or vandalism, and then in the eventuality you ever catch someone, you can attribute to a particular, mark or scrawl or style of vandalism. You can charge them for all the damage they've done previously. You guys do lots of photos. I don't know if you do that, but I would suggest that if you don't. And then I also also might suggest if you're replacing vandalized signs anyway, put up one of those little ones that says smile if you're on camera. I may be, stereotyping, but I think it's a lot of times youngsters with nothing better to do, and even the fact that you caught somebody, I mean, for a guy to see a sign that says you're under surveillance and then take the sign, that's comical. But it could be a deterrent, I think, even for the places that aren't under surveillance. You're gonna annoy some people, but if it saves money, I support something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
Yes, Commissioner Highland knows, along with all the work that Paul does, I don't know how you do it, just shows you how smart you are. I just admire you for all those smarts. But I don't know if you picked up on my article about the work that Steve Smith's doing with the cleanup around the harbor. I had a chance to meet with his skipper, my short-term memory, Robert Sloan is the skipper. If you ever have a moment to meet with him and get his views, he gets to parts of the harbor not even Paul reaches. I mean, he's going up with the different little groups, counting birds by the wheel. So he's got a fantastic perspective that I was really impressed with. And I know a lot of that doesn't encompass what you're involved with, but one of the topics that we talked about was the overfishing in the upper bay and some of the littering and what have you on the banks. I know that's county land that doesn't really, nothing you could really do about it, just that you're aware of it. So there's so much more he could tell you if you ever have a chance to, if you see him on the water, just say hey, because he's really easy to talk to. His dog's fantastic. I envy him for being able to work with his dog. Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further public comments, we'll move on to the motion for reconsideration and a motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the Harbor Commission at this meeting or immediately prior, made by only one of the commission members who voted with the prevailing side. Are there any commissioners that wish to make a motion for reconsideration at this time? Seeing none, not hearing anything from Chair Cunningham, we'll move on. Commissioner announcements. Any commissioner announcements? Commissioner Scully, Commissioner Young, Commissioner Burchick?
Yes. Please. Last month I expressed concern that we lost our lighting with the pavilion, and they re-roofed, and all the ridge lines and all the little details that show up at night with their great lighting went away. So last week I met with the owner, Armin Gargazian, and he was just a pleasure to talk to. He's working on it. He's got the lower eaves with the lights up. He's hoping to have part of the ridge line or part of the framework completed in December, and then in the future he plans to finish off, the rest of the lights sometime in the future. So I just wanted to kind of tip my hat to him. He's doing such a nice thing for the community to light up that building, and it comes at great expense. So I tip my hat to Armin.
That's great, and thank you for following up with that. Much appreciated. It's a good effort. Commissioner Williams?
Wait for the next one.
Oh, sure. Secretary Marston? Any announcements? Chair Cunningham? I think his cell reception was getting a little weak, so we'll accept that as he has none. I'd like to make one announcement. This weekend is what's referred to as a beaver moon. And it's not a very common event, and it's going to be a large moon. The best time to see it is Sunday as the sun is setting. It will be rising in the east sky. Large moon, interesting color, supposedly, but what will come with that is a very high king tide. And come Saturday morning, about 8:20 in the morning, will be one of the highest king tides I've seen in a number of years. It's about 7 feet plus 7, so
December. The only possible business that could come up would be a dock appeal, that Chris Miller would need to have heard. So stay tuned for that. There's a window that will close, towards the end of the month, that would prevent such things from coming up, so we'll keep you apprised, but right now, there's no business that is required to be conducted in, December. There is a small chance that some business could require, to hear.
So are we able to, amongst us here, tentatively say, should there be no business presented, that we will cancel the meeting? However, if there is, we'll keep it. And then as soon as you find out, you'll put that out, circulate that information. Is that correct? Great. Thank you for that. Any other items that commissioners would like to put on the agenda?
Yes,
Yes, it's Commissioner Switzer.
I would like to put on the agenda the possibility or the discussion of a public dock access to the Bayside Retail Center.
So be it. And that would then be on the agenda at the next scheduled meeting, whether that turns out to be in December or January. Okay, I think we're covered there. I did ask Chair Cunningham as well. I don't think he has anything. The next meeting, tentatively, based on what I just discussed,